各位好，我是林咏梅. Hello everyone, I am Yanmei Lin. Welcome to my first episode of Mandarin pronunciation. I was going to make one video, but I think after looking at all the topics and the detail that I want to get into, it's looking like I'm going to make a couple of different episodes to cover a few things I want to discuss. So I want to start off with a little introduction, who I am and why I'm presenting this topic. Okay? So I am what's called an American-born Chinese, ABC, although I'm actually part Taiwanese. And so I want to discuss that right up front, that China, mainland China, uses what's called simplified Chinese, whereas Taiwan uses traditional Chinese. And so if I'm going to present any characters to you on screen, they will be in traditional Chinese. So if you can see right here on my last bullet points in both columns, the one that says simplified Chinese is 简体字, and the one that is traditional Chinese is 繁体字, and the T in the middle are the same word, but you can see that in simplified Chinese, it's written a lot more simply, and in the traditional Chinese, it's the full character with all the different strokes in it. So all the characters that I will present in my videos will be traditional Chinese, 繁体字. So my fluency level, I would estimate between medium to high, certainly not expert, but I can carry a conversation. If I'm going into a more technical or specialized discussion, whether they're medical terms or technological terms, my fluency level drops drastically. I grew up in the US, I was born in the US, and I grew up in the US. And so I learned Mandarin, Taiwanese, and English all at the same time in my household. Of course, I got a lot of reinforcement with English by going to school here, and then, of course, living amongst all my American-speaking, English-speaking neighbors and friends. So I did speak with my family and my family friends, Taiwanese and Mandarin, more heavily on the Mandarin, up until school ended and I left home. Once I left home, I didn't have anyone to speak with, and without practicing your language skills, they tend to fall off. Now, literacy level, I do want to tell you that in my writing and reading, I only went to Chinese school up until about third grade. And as you all know, when you stop going to school, your functional literacy is about 2 grades below that. So we'll talk about maybe a first grade functional level. So without prompting and being able to write a letter, or read a letter even, I can probably write something as simple as, "Dear Mom and Dad, I love you," signed me. Okay? That's about my level. I cannot pick up a newspaper and read it. I have been trying to, several times throughout my adulthood, I have tried to relearn, or I had renewed attempts to learn written Chinese. And so in the past, I used old school books and textbooks and elementary school primers that I had. And I've also tried to purchase some more home educational books for children. So I was stuck reading, fairy tales and stories and basic elementary school level primers. Very tedious, and I haven't really been able to get into them. So I had a lot of starts and stops throughout the years. Now, recently, and another thing that's actually prompted this video, I've been watching a lot of Chinese dramas, specifically without the English captions. So something that is kind of interesting about Chinese movies and TV shows is without any other captioning. There will be Chinese captioning. And the reason for that is that spoken Chinese has so many dialects. There's the three main ones, which is Mandarin, of course, Cantonese, and then depending on who you speak to, the third main primary dialect will be like either Hokkien or Fujian, or for me, I would say Taiwanese, but they're very similar. But then every small area, district, city, province, region, they all have their own personal dialects as well. And it's really fun to hear the different ways. Some have a slight deviation and some have very drastic deviation in the way people say things. However, there's only one written language. Okay, two, I just explained simplified and traditional, but that's specifically a division from mainland China and Taiwan. But mainland China has a whole lot of dialects, but one written language. So the reason that TV shows and movies will have Chinese captions for a Chinese audience is so that everyone speaking different dialects can still know what the actors are saying on screen. So I have also purchased a lot of novels from which the Chinese dramas I'm watching were based. So, like if you're watching Harry Potter, you would like the Harry Potter books to back you up. Now, a lot of the novels that I've purchased, actually all of the novels that I've purchased, are written by and for mainland Chinese. So they're in simplified Chinese. So one um, exercise that I'm doing for myself is I'm translating them into traditional Chinese, and then I'm practicing my words as I write by copying and writing the traditional Chinese. So I say so a lot in this video. I apologize for that. What I want to go over is how to read the pronunciations um, and how to say the letters represented in English letters with the pronunciation for the Mandarin style of speaking. Okay, so we're going to start off with, in this episode, the first episode of this discussion, we're going to start off with the Chinese phonetic alphabet. And now I'm going to talk about that for just a second. So first things first, let's go over some vocabulary words. In Chinese, and what we're going to be talking about is the Zhu Yin Fu Hao, and that is the alphabet used for traditional Chinese um, pronunciation. And so we also have what it's also known as bopomorpho. So bopomorpho are the first four letters in the 注音符号 in the alphabet. So just like we say in English, alphabet or the ABCs. So they're interchangeable terms. Alphabet is the set of letters, and then ABCs are the first three letters, and you say ABCs. So you might hear a Chinese or Taiwanese person saying, oh, let's learn Bopomofo, or let's learn 注音符号. They're talking about the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start looking at the written Chinese. I'm going to switch views here for a moment so that you can see specifically what we're looking at. So on the left-hand side of your screen, 学中文, we're going to learn Chinese, okay? This is how characters look in a book, on signs, however you're looking at them. It's just the straight characters. And as you grow up, you don't need any crutches, any hints. Or if you have a really strict parent or a strict teacher, you might learn these words by rote, saying them over and over again as you write them over and over again. However, if you're trying to learn something from a textbook, in the primer ages or in a dictionary or just learning them at all, if you come across a word that you're not familiar with, if you look on the right side of the screen, you're going to see those tiny little characters. I'm going to call them letters from here on out so that you start associating them in your mind with alphabet letters, because that's what they are, but they're phonetic. They don't exist anywhere else except to help you figure out how to say that character, that word. So if you notice, the first one has 3 little characters down the right-hand side, and if you look on the edge, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a tiny little up dash, and it tells you how to say the word, not only the pronunciation, but also the tone that you're going to use. So I'm going to say a few things over and over again in the video so that you catch on. But when you say Chinese words, they are always pronounced the exact same way without any changes. So if you can imagine back to the days when you had the automated voices telling you how to dial a phone number, the phone numbers were recorded a certain way. And from then on, they were just replayed, those digits. So for example, if someone were to record 2548, then every time that you hear those numbers, you'll always hear 2548, and there'll be no change because it's a recording in the way they say 2. Okay, so it's always going to be 2, okay, 5, 4, 8. 8 will always be 8. It will never be 8. Okay, so we're going to hear and see some of these different tonalities, and they will change the meaning of a word. So I will get to that later on, but right now I just wanted to show you the difference between learning to read and write Chinese and say Chinese words, and what happens when you're already fully learned those words. You can see those words in a newspaper or in a book, and you can actually, or write a letter to your relatives. You don't need the phonetic helping. Okay? So I'm going to go through the actual letters of the Chinese phonetic alphabet all the way through to the end, starting with these, and then we'll go into how they're represented in English. Okay? So the letters that you see next to the Chinese letter, the Zhu Yin Fu Hao letter, is just to help you say it. So for example, the letter A in English could be represented spelled out as AY. That helps we say A. B might be BEE, is the name of the letter. The sound they make would be A or B. Okay? So starting on this page, we have, going down the first column, bo, po, mo, fo. And you'll notice that I always say it the same way, and there's a certain shape to my mouth. Okay? As we learn these letters, some of those shapes will become very important. So, bo, po, mo, fo, da, ta, na, la. So I'm kind of grinning for those. G, k, h, same mouth shape. Ji, chi, shi. Okay, I'm going to pause here for just a second because there's something that you might notice. The last 2 letters that I just said, chi and shi, use American letters, Q and X, in a completely different way than they're represented when you're saying English words that use Q and X. Anytime you see these letters in anything representing Chinese pronunciation or Chinese words tried to spell out in English, they will always sound like this, chi and shi, okay? So we'll come back to how they spell out words in when you put letters together, like when you spell apple, A-P-P-L-E, how that all works out. Continuing on, I am purposely giving you the letters in order. It's also how I learned the alphabet. This page right here is the most important reason why you need to learn the Zhu Yin Fu Hao in order. And the reason is because mouth shape and related sounds. So, zhi, chi, shi, ri, zi, si, si. So if you hear the sounds on the left-hand side, they're a little bit more airy. So I represented that by throwing in the H's over on the left-hand side. Z, S, S are more toothy, and your mouth is more of a grin. Z, S, S. Whereas the words on the left, the characters on the left, zhi, chi, shi, ri, you're almost making like a kiss. You're almost making your lips into a fish, okay? Now, up till here, my colors were kind of greenish blue. I'm going to have the letters who are orange. They are E, U, U. Up till this, before this slide, all those letters were beginning of word letters, okay? You can also have a few words where there is only a one letter pronunciation. In that previous slide, those could be standalone letters. Over here, E, U, U can also be standalone. They can be beginning of words and they can be end of words or middle of words. So we'll come to that in a minute. A, O, E. Okay, so this is weird. E, when you see a English letter E, it's not really pronounced or E. It's more pronounced like you're almost wanting to say without the R. So you want to say almost like a UH, but more curled. Okay, so we'll come back to some of those as well. This gets a little bit complicated. If you stick with me, I will be spelling these all out in English for you and going through the pronunciations as well. So hang in there. I, A, ow, O. Okay, here's a couple more extra weirdness. A-O is ow. O-U is not ow like out. It's not oo like you, Y-O-U. It's pronounced like a long O. So O, where you kind of close your mouth at the end. O. The ones on the right-hand side, an, ang, and finally a rounded okay? Now, I want you to notice something about the Chinese language. There aren't many ending consonants, okay? These four letters on the right-hand side, plus if you count that as an R, okay? But the four N's and NG's are the only ending consonants in Chinese, okay? So that's something that you might find interesting, and you might want to understand why a lot of Chinese people learning English for the first time seem to drop the ending consonants for things. So think words that end with any consonant at all is really hard for Chinese people to say. We all want to throw a vowel at the end. So just be aware of that when you're listening to a Chinese person trying to say a word that ends with a consonant. Okay? So I'm going to go over tones really quickly because, again, talking about the phone numbers, the recorded numbers, we always say specific words a specific way without change. If you change the way you say a word, you're going to change the meaning of that word. So let me explain something. So when we sound words out, we first put the letters together. So like C-A-B spells cab. So if you're doing this as a first grader, you might say K-A-B, cab. okay? So I'm going to do something really simple, and that's going to be m, a, ma. So I'm going to say these 5 sounds with ma as my example vocalization. So the first tone, you almost say it like someone singing a pitch in a choir. You just kind of hold it. Ma. There's no physical symbol. So if you see letters put together, bopomofo letters put together next to a character, and there's no symbol at all, it's the first tone. Ma. Second tone is raised up like a question. Ma. Third tone is a twist. The voice dips and rises like you're saying, mm-hmm. So third tone is ma. Fourth tone is a sharp, definitely, okay? It's an imperative, it's a shout. Not quite, you don't want to shout, but ma, okay? And then we have something called the light sound, which is a dot over the letters. And it's for things that are an afterthought or an accent or even like a question word. So, ma, okay? So I'm going to go over them really quickly so you can hear them. Ma, 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 okay? So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like at the end, okay? Because right now we need to start getting more into the actual rules for putting the letter sounds together, as well as some letter combinations, okay? I want to emphasize again, the letters or the letter sounds will always make the same sounds. And I already talked about beginning of words, middle of words, end of words, and then standalone letters that sound like words. Kind of like the word I and A are in English. They're a letter, but they can also be a word. The word I or the word A, okay? So let's talk about the beginning of words. So I'm showing you here the English representative letter that we use consistently, as well as the bopomofo letter it goes with. So I've tried to keep these in order, but taking them out into the correct groupings. So the first set, I don't need to say anything about because they will always have the same sound as their English counterpart. So b, p, m, f, d, t, n, l, k, h. So there were a couple missing there, and we'll go back and I'll explain why I pulled them out of order. G, okay, it's represented by the letter G, but it will always be a hard G, like gorilla. So even if you see a word like G-E-N-G, it is still gung, okay? It is not jung. So even though in English the letter G changes sounds depending on what's after it, the letter I or the letter E, or even the letter Y, we definitely don't want to change the way we say G. It's always a hard G, G. Now, J, okay, G. So if you hear me say G, it's a thin J. So G, you can always think of it as like Jeep or OG, but not like jump. There's a bit more breathiness in the word jump. So you want it to be more G, okay? You can do the grin, G. The next letter is the Q. I told you about the Q. It's kind of a thin, high-pitched, maybe not high-pitched like up, but chi, okay? Not ch, but more of a chi, like cheese, maybe, is a good way to think of that. Now, X is she, it's, which is really funny because in Chinese, the word for thin is also she, okay? So think of it as thin. She, this is the beginning word for words like thank you, 谢谢, okay? It's always represented with an X, but sometimes like some other translators might use HS. Instead of SH, they use HS to represent it as being sharp and tight. 西. So we talked about these 7 letters, and I want you to notice something right here. I'm using the letter I to represent a vocalization of the consonants before the letter I. So we're not using a whisper, so it's not okay, it's zh. So it's like you're saying it. If you can hear my voice saying it, I'm saying it's not like a schwa sound. I'm not saying I'm not saying a, I'm not saying e, and it's definitely not a long e sound. So you definitely want to look at zh, sh, sh, r, z, s, s. Now, when people are teaching bopomofo, or they're trying to give you the right pronunciation of something the first time, and I'm doing it right now, there's an over-exaggeration between the H versions and the non-H versions. So, zh, ch, sh, I'm making it very breathy. Z, s, s, I'm making it very tight. But in reality, when we're just talking fast and speaking in conversation, they're very similar with a slight difference. So I'm going to show you the slight difference. The word for the number 3 is sun, which is that last letter down there. Sun. The word for mountain is shan. So very, very similar. I just said it very similarly. Shan, sun, sun, shun. So a nice little tongue twister might be 3 mountains. Sun, shun, okay? So just bear that in mind. There's nothing wrong with saying something overly correct. If I said shun, nobody's going to, oh, you mean sun? No. But if I said sun instead of shun, they will correct me. Did you just mean to say 3 or did you mean to say mountain? Oh, no, I meant to say mountain. Shan, okay? Sun is 3. Shan is mountain. Middle of words. I've already said these 3 letters can be pronounced, can be representative at the beginning of a word, in the middle of a word, at the end of a word, or it can also be standalone by itself, okay? Now, the letter I, if it's by itself, it's just E, okay? A lot of times you might see this represented with a Y-I, so that you actually pronounce it ye, okay? But only if it's in the middle or if it is at the beginning of a word. If it's at the end of a word, for example, following ba, it doesn't have the Y in front of it. It's just bi, and that's never ever pronounced by or bi. It's always pronounced b, okay? Long E sound. Except, the exception that makes the rule, if it's after one of those 7 breathy letters or tight letters. So if it's zh, ch, sh, r, z, c, s, it's always just the vocalization of the consonant. Okay? U, which is the character that looks like an X. U is pronounced U. So like for example, if it's after B, after bo, it's pronounced bu. So like the word for not is bu. Okay? It can be written with a WU if it's a standalone by itself, but it is never pronounced woo. It's pronounced oo. Always pronounced oo. Okay? And then I have an English as U here, but it's in the character, it looks like the square U. It's pronounced with a fish face. This is a very hard letter to say or explain. We don't really have anything like that in English, so if you just want to copy me, it's U, okay? And it sounds like fish. The word for fish in Chinese is yu, okay, the third tone, yu, but you make that kissy face, okay? And you make like a fish lips, and then you say you in the fish face, yu, okay? So some people describing it will try to spell it EW, but that's not, it's not you. It's not you. It's U. Okay, so if you can learn that one, that's a really hard one to learn. End of words. So we have ah. Ah is always pronounced ah. Never ever like ah in apple or eh in hand. Okay, so when you see the letter ah, the letter A representing ah in Englishly spelled out words, you will never ever say eh or ah, okay? So for example, the last name H-A-N is pronounced Han, never ever Han, okay? So Han Solo in Star Wars, that is correctly pronounced, just if he were Chinese, okay? O is like you are starting to say the long O, but you don't close your mouth. And then in words, even if it doesn't have the U in front of it, this is usually one of those combo letters, like the letter Q in English is almost always followed by the letter U. But even when it's not followed by the letter U, it's pronounced almost like there is a invisible U there. So O usually follows U and it ends up saying whoa, whoa. Okay, I just did that to exaggerate. You don't finish the O, so it's like whoa, but you don't go O. Okay, the letter E, the English letter E, representing the letter is, like I said before, it's pronounced like you're starting to say but don't round off the R. So uh. So if you notice, I kind of just let my lips fall open without closing them back up to finish the R. Okay. A. Now the letter A usually is written in combination with E. Okay, and it's yeah. Okay, so here are some examples. If you ever see a word that looks like BIE or LIE, it is never by or B. It's always bie. LIE is lie, not lie, not li. It's lie. Okay? So again, once you start learning the words, you're going to notice that the way it's pronounced is always the way it's pronounced. So even if you see a word that looks like an English word, for example, pie, P-I-E, it's not pronounced pie, it's pronounced pie, okay? And finally, the last couple of words here we have, well, they're not the last couple words, sorry. We're moving back to AI, okay, is pronounced like a long I. EI is pronounced like the long A, okay? I like to keep these two pairings together in the word Taipei. So the capital of Taiwan, Taipei, has both these combinations in it, and that will help you remember AI, T-A-I-P-E-I, Tai. AI is I, EI is A. Now that's very pertinent to my name. As you remember, my name is May. Up there at the title, MEI is pronounced like the 5th month of the year, May. Okay? All is rounded. So we don't say ow. Okay? It's more like all, and there's like a rounded closing of the lips. And O is also the long O, but in contrast to the O that we learned before, you close your lips. O, okay? Now, here's the last slide. An, un, okay? Ang, that one has a G on the end. Ung has the G on the end. And then finally, is an exaggerated closing of the R. Okay, so like per or fur, but more you want to really bring that closing R in. Then we have some combinations. These combinations are also bopomorpho letter combinations, so they are represented by more than one letter. And these are always used in combination with the English letters on the left. And so UI is never pronounced with, like quit or ui or anything else. It's pronounced way with the W in front. So someone's last name could be SUI, and that name would be pronounced sway, like SWAY. Okay? UO is always pronounced wo. That is the word for I or me in Chinese. Wo. Okay? In is always pronounced like the long E, like lean. Okay? My last name, Lin. Okay? Ing is self-explanatory. It sounds just like the ending word for verbs in English, ing. Ing. ONG is always pronounced ong, okay? Never pronounced ong, okay? So I kind of represented it here with the OH to try to make it a long O, ong. This is a weird one. Just like the first one, which is UI, this is IU, okay? It is never pronounced you or you, okay? It is always pronounced yo, okay? So someone's last name might be Liu, Uncle Leo, okay? Leo, if you heard that, the L at the front, but then followed by yo, Leo, okay? IAN is a combination sound. And if you imagine it as simply being YEN or YAN, yen, okay, yen. So the side, BIAN, bien, okay. UAN, if it follows a consonant, it sounds like one, okay, like tuan. If it begins a word, stick a Y in front of it, so it's like yuan, okay. UN is pronounced un, okay. So not un, I put un and woon there, but it's more of a kind of an in-between un and un. So it's kind of in between. You're pronouncing it un, okay? And yue, 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 okay? So let's go back to tones for a minute. And I want to show you that when you put letters together, m, a, when you go down the tone list, the word changes. So m, a, ma, that's mom, okay? Ma, hemp, cannabis, hemp. Ma, horse. Ma. Now I like that one because it sounds like what it is. You're yelling at someone, so you're scolding them. So you actually are being imperative. Ma. And then if some of you may have learned a little Chinese and you're asking, hi, hello, how are you? Ni hao ma. So ma is a question word added to the end of a question sentence. How are you doing? Ni hao ma. Hmm? So it's the light sound. So I want to point out on the left hand side I have 1, 2, 3, 4 qing. Qing means light. 1, 2, 3, 4 are the actual names of the tone. Tone 1, tone 2, tone 3, tone 4. We don't have a tone 5. We have 5 tones, but we don't have a tone 5. We have a light tone. Okay, and it's a dot over the characters. Okay. Now I'm going to go over to the right hand side and look at these words. A, may. Okay. I don't know a word offhand. I'm sure there is one, but I couldn't think of a word that has the single, the tone one. May. My name, Lin Yong Mei. May is plum, plum blossom. Mei, Mei Hua. Okay. Now the word for beautiful is Mei. So Mei, Mei. Okay. And then we have Mei, which is sister, little sister. 姐姐 is big sister. So little sister is Mei. But why is Mei in both the fourth sound and the light sound? Well, in Chinese, most of our family members are two identical symbols. The first one has a tone, and the second one has is a light tone. So when I go to say little sister in full, I would say Mei, Mei. Okay, so I'm going to go through the family real quick. Father, ba, ba. Mother, mama. Okay. Older brother, ga, ga. Younger brother, di, di. Older sister, jie, jie. Little sister, mei, mei. So the first tone, if you notice, changed depending on which family member I was saying. But the second word I said always had that light sound. Okay, the dot. I'm going to stick on this page for just a second and harp on my name. Most Chinese girls with the word May in English, M-E-I, May, is actually this beautiful, May. Somehow they have the word beautiful in their name. The most specific one or the most common one is Mei Li. This may not be their actual given name. This may be a name that they've chosen to use in English. 美丽 means beautiful, the two words together. But it's also easy to translate into English into Mary. So you might see a lot of Chinese girls named Mary, and it would be a fair assumption that their Chinese translation is 美丽. However, my name is Mei, which is plum blossom. Okay. But as you know, in English, we don't really use tonalities consistently with people's names. So you have Steve, 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 you know. So whether you're trying to get someone's attention or whatever, I've been hollered at from across the room and people are like, hey, May. Now at that point in time, guess what? They've just called me little sister, okay? Because they didn't say May, they said May. And whether they meant to scold me or whether they mean to call me little sister because I may be younger than them, or they might have that connection with me, or if they're just pronouncing my name in English, they've just called me little sister. Okay? So now that we have actually put some knowledge on how to pronounce the sounds in Chinese based off of English letters, we're going to go through one of the dramas that I just enjoy so much. Watch it over and over again. It's called The Untamed. You can find this drama on Netflix. I watch it on Viki, and they, I think, even have the full dramas in playlists on YouTube. So the Chinese name for The Untamed is Chen Qingling. Okay. One thing about Chinese characters are every character is one syllable. Okay. So the next two lines are the names of the two main characters in the drama. Wei Wu Xian. Wei Wu Xian. And you're going to see that I have them separated to three separate words, or you can even hyphenate the first name. I should say given name. So in Chinese, we always use our surname or our family name first, and then our individual given name. So his name is Wei. Wei is his last name, so he would be Mr. Wei. Wei Wuxian. And then the next character I have here, you can have some some people have two syllable names where the first syllable is their last name or their surname, their family name. And then the second syllable or their given name is only one syllable long. So Lan Zan. Okay? But his more formal name is Lan Wang Ji. Lang Wang Ji. Lang. Lan Wang Ji. And you notice that I have in parentheses the hyphenation where it belongs. Okay? I've picked specific names to highlight on this final slide because I wanted to point out the really hard to remember combos. Okay? So this next one has two of those combos. His name is Nie Ming Jue. Jue. Jing. Okay, not Jin. His name is not Jin, it is Jing, means golden. Okay? Guang Shan. Meng Yao. Jing Ru Lan. And then I had to add my own name into the mix as written properly, last name first, Lin Yongmei. Okay. So I want to point out before I move on, this is a screenshot from the show. Okay. The reason I wanted to do this video is because if you're watching a Chinese drama, more than likely you've got your English captions on. If you've got your English captions on, the rest of the verbiage, the dialogue, is going to be spelled out for you in English. So your sin shall never be forgiven. And then they call him out. Wei Wu Xian. The captions are only as good as the captioner. A lot of these are volunteers or paid translators who are manually translating from what they're saying into English. So I don't like when people do this. They try to combine. So his last name is Wei. His first name is Wu Xian. Well, if you look at this, you might be tempted to say Wuxian. Okay? It's not. Okay? It's always going to follow the formulas I've outlined in the beginning of this video. I like to tear every Chinese combination of names, whether they are names of people, places, or things. Like in these dramas, they've named their swords and their magical weapons, their magical flutes, etc. I like to make sure that I've separated the English so that each syllable has its own word. So I would have written this WEI space capital WU hyphen capital XIAN. Okay? So if you come across this in your viewings of your dramas or your films, please make that mental correction if the translator didn't do that for you. So This is on Netflix. So for example, I've watched this on Netflix because I'm watching it with some friends, also so I could watch it in the TV. If I'm watching it on the computer, I go for Viki. And like I said, I think it's also available on YouTube. So depending on how you're translating, you might get different um, translators who represent it on screen differently. Okay? So what I'd like to do next is end this episode. And if you could leave me a comment after watching this on what the next topic you would like to hear on the pronunciation of Mandarin words, I would definitely take your uh, suggestions to heart. And my next video will just carry on from here as well. Okay, so thank you very much for watching and have a great weekend.